everybody. Welcome to a Well Done Professional podcast. I'm very excited today. I have a woman that I very much admire as a businesswoman, but also as a friend, Lisa Cruz from Red Shoes. So I have to ask this question. You started your business in 2008.
Correct.
I remember very distinctly 2008 was probably one of the worst economic crises we had other than maybe this past year. So I looked at your background. You had this, quite a resume, Affinity and White Earth. I mean, you had a very, very successful career in marketing and public relations. What in the world drove you to start your own business, especially in 2008?
Yeah, I wasn't really looking at economic conditions at the time that this started to brew in my head about starting the business. But for me personally, I realized I would never be happy working for anyone else. And that was unfair to those I was working for or was contemplating working for. I literally thought, now is the time. I have all this knowledge in my head. I know what needs to be done in starting a business. So I just thought, I just want to pilot my own plane, drive my own bus, and see what happens. Now, regarding the economy, when we launched in the spring of 2008, I don't think anybody knew quite what was coming, but shortly thereafter, the economy crashed, and that was insane.
And you obviously made it through. How did you approach that, and was that time somewhat similar to even what 2020, other than the pandemic piece, but getting through, again, somewhat of an economic crisis?
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels, but I will also tell you that what we're going through right now is completely different. There were a lot of lessons that I learned. Now, in 2008, when we started, it was really good for us as a business because one of the first departments companies lay off is marketing and communications. So if they were laying off folks internally, they were looking to externally source it. And so we were there and available. So it actually worked out for our advantage. But what we just went through or are going through right now is different. I mean, we're literally having doors close in terms of businesses every day. People losing their jobs. You don't know from one day to the next what to expect.
Yeah, no, I understand. We're obviously dealing with the same
Yeah.
thing. So we survived 2020. That's the good news.
Yes, it is.
We survived 2020. We are, again, I don't know what 2021 is going to look like, but we survived 2020. And, there's no small feat. As a small business owner, entrepreneurial, it was tough. We were tough rowing to get through 2020. So, a lot of people, female, male, decided to, close shop, like you said. But a lot of women left the workforce in 2020, mainly out of necessity because they had to do homeschooling. So, from your lens, how do you see this that's going on right now in specifically female entrepreneurs, female leaders? How do you see this going to impact, obviously, things going forward? I know I have some views on my concerns about what this is going to look like for women in leadership.
Yeah.
But give us your lens. You're in right with them on their messaging and all of that. So what do you see?
Oh, it seems like on a frequent basis I hear about another woman taking a step back to stay at home. Now, I want to make it perfectly clear that if that is a decision a woman needs to make, that's a decision she needs to make. Now, from the working professional or working outside of the home perspective, I really worry about the setbacks that's taking place right now. And I really worry about how long is it for us to get back to where we were prior to the pandemic. Strides have been made for years, decades, but I feel like in one short, 11-month period, all these steps back were taken, and it really concerns me what's taking place right now. So we're going to see what happens. Now, having said all of that, I'm an agency that employs all women. So there's 10 of us. So I know as an employer to accommodate working women outside of the home, I have to be as flexible as I can be, especially given the circumstances right now.
I was going to ask you that. So, obviously we're concerned as well, just because, we try to be a champion for all diversity, including women.
Yep.
So my question is, from your clients, the employer perspective, is there an awareness of this? And are they starting to think about, because we hear about D&I all the time. I would say
Yeah.
we hear about it, but I don't know that I think we're good at it, especially here in Appleton.
Yeah.
What do you see employers talking about it? Are they being more flexible? You and I can be flexible as a small business owner
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we ourselves are
yeah.
women.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that?
For the most part, I think that I am.
Good.
I think, and maybe we're just fortunate because we have awesome clients, but I think that they get it. And, here's the thing though, Sharon, too, is like, I want to demonstrate to our clients as well that here's how we're making it work. And they see what we're doing and how we're flexing and having people and families out with COVID and quarantine and kids home from school. Well, now kids are back in school, so it almost is like those external forces are forcing the hand. Even if you were on the fence before about flexibility and accommodations, this time has really forced a company's hand to really take notice.
Well, and I think, I always say you got to look at what are the things you learned, what's the silver lining.
Yeah.
And, for us, it just still amazes me that we have had people in 2020, now this is my 25th year in executive search. I would have bet probably all the money I have that we would have never had anybody hired who never met face to face. And I can't tell you how many people in 2020 interviewed, hired simply over Zoom.
Yeah.
So I definitely think there was some good aspects of the pandemic as well,
Yes.
as it relates to, women. And again, balance is an interesting term as it relates to work-life balance, because I always equate work-life balance to what my farmer father said, and that is when you have to do a certain thing, you have to do it, and you have to do it really well. And then there's other times when you have to do this thing and you have to do that really well, and that's how you balance. It doesn't mean 6 hours I'm here and 6 hours I'm here. It's not, to
Thank
me,
you
that's
for
not
that.
balance.
Yes, I would 100% agree, because I think when people talk about work-life balance, they have this nirvana in their head that yes, 6 hours here and then I'm going to go to my job and I'm going to be out the door at 5 o'clock. That is simply not life today. And if you set yourself up to think I'm going to reach this perfect nirvana of balance, I think you're going to be over and over disappointed. So I'm a big one on let's redefine what balance means.
Right.
I personally strive for balance, and sometimes personal family life takes precedence, sometimes professional working outside the home does. Overall, maybe I'm achieving some sort of balance, but
Right.
in the long run, but we got to give ourselves a little bit of grace in there too.
Yeah, I do worry about the social aspect of the pandemic and people
Yes.
working from home. The other thing I worry about is people, they will stop work, they gotta help with schoolwork, whatever, and then they work well into the night. And I worry about the exhaustion of that as well, because you never leave your environment, so work is always right there. Where when you're at work, you can at least go home. You and I probably do the same thing, but it's different when you're not in the work environment.
I know.
Tell me how is your team dealing with that?
I think that we're doing okay, probably room for improvement, but I am such a proponent of telling my team, like, you take care of what you need to do, work comes secondary, we'll figure it out. For me personally, I can tell you, like last night, I was on a client call like 7:45 at night. So those lines have really blurred. Funny enough, I was just reading an article, I think it was in the New York Times, and they were talking about people have started to do things that make a clean break from the work-home environment. So they might go for a walk in the morning before their day officially starts at the home office, because we're missing that commuter time, that time in between. Yeah. That's the other thing we've been talking about from a team perspective. When you're doing virtual team meetings, you can literally schedule those back to back, where you hang up and you're clicking on to the next one, versus when we were in what I call normal times, you'd drive back from that meeting, you'd have some downtime, you'd get to the office,
You have time to think about the meeting.
Yeah, talk to your colleagues about it. So we just started mandating that in our office, there's got to be a mandatory 15 minutes between each meeting, at least.
That's actually that's great advice, because I just had it the other day, and then I sort of had to laugh to myself. I called the client and I said, I'm concerned because the candidates are meeting back to back with the employer, and I'm worried they're going to see each other. He goes, Sharon, the meetings are Zoom. And I went, oh, I guess I can't do back to back. I mean, it's like a way to go, Sharon.
Yeah,
but seriously, you think about, again,
Yes.
no time to really think, no time to debrief the call you were on before you jump on the next one. So that's actually great advice.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep.
We're going to do that. Write that down, Cameron. So I want to talk about your business because this is a leadership podcast, and it really is about, I mean, it doesn't matter, male, female, it's really about becoming great leaders and really, as it relates to all aspects, whether it's community, company, culture, all of that, being good leaders.
Yeah.
So you started your business 2008. If you were to look at your business today and could start all over again, you get your get out of jail free card, what would you keep the same and what would you purposely change?
Oh, that's such a good question. That's a good question. What would I keep and what would I change? Okay, I don't know if this is specific enough, but one of the things, and I just used this in my presentation last week, is I sure wish I would have found my voice earlier, Sharon. Like, to speak up. There have been things that have happened during my career. I'm like, why didn't I say something? Like, what's wrong with saying something? Nothing's wrong with saying something. And now, quickly approaching 50, I feel like, I got something to say. I don't know what that's about.
Is that what happened to me? I turned 50.
Yeah.
Quite a few years ago, by the way. Yeah.
But I just wish I would have found my voice earlier in speaking up. Again, I don't know if that's that drive you want to be liked, but I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and I'm okay with that. And suddenly you just come into your own. Mm-hmm. What would I keep the same? I loved what I've created from the get-go. After experiencing a number of organizations and leadership styles, I really learned what I didn't like, what wasn't effective to building a great culture. So as painful as those times were, I would never get rid of those because they taught me so much on what to do today. So I would always keep that the same, like just those learnings and then applying that to my team today. This is a more tactical thing. One of the things that I am so grateful that we did, who knew we were going to encounter a pandemic 12 years later, is when we built the business, we set it up so employees could work anywhere. Mm-hmm. So everything is online, from our server to all of our software programs, everything. So that has been really a huge benefit for us now transitioning to this virtual
Yeah, we had the
world.
same thing, and we felt very grateful
Yeah.
that it was seamless for us to go home because we really needed that ability to work from home. Candidates can't always talk during the day, so we had to have that ability. So it was really seamless when they said, "Okay, you're done. Everybody goes home."
Yeah.
It was so I'm too very grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So owning a business is interesting, isn't it?
Oh, it's tough.
Mm-hmm. So, what are some of the things that advice? We have a lot of young listeners. We have people. I get a lot of people that, especially who have read my book, that say, "I might want to be an entrepreneur," but I think it's the sexy piece of being an entrepreneur.
Correct.
I still remember the first time I found out I had to pay the other half of FICA, and I go, "What? What is that? And why do I have to pay that?" I mean, you don't know any of that stuff when you're young and you just know that you're in it to win it, right?
Yeah.
We're going for it. So, what advice would you give? I mean, I guarantee you there are people sitting here thinking right now, I can't find a job. I'm sick of the pandemic. I'm just going to start my own.
Okay.
What would you tell them?
So here's the deal. That there's two things that I have found are the difference between me and more people than I ever realized. Number one, you're going to have to take some risk. And people are very uncomfortable with risk. And I never understood that starting my business, how many people are risk adverse. Mm-hmm. I never realized that I was a risk taker until I took this on. Here's the other thing. Just because you say you want to start a business or you have that entrepreneurial spirit doesn't give you an excuse to try something and if it's not going quite as you expected, to give it up. You have to have grit and determination to stick with whatever it is you started. Mm-hmm. Because I see a lot of people pick something up, fling it away, it doesn't quite work out. You owe it to that business to give it everything you can and really keep focused on it and how can you improve it. So, admittedly so, I have no doubt that I have some degree of attention deficit disorder.
I think all
I know, I think it might be
entrepreneurs
a
do.
characteristic of entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
but on the flip side, like I have this fortitude like and commitment to stick with something like until I can't do it literally anymore. So I think you have to remember, and yes, being an entrepreneur, owning your own business, yes, you get to call the shots, but you work for your employees.
Mhm.
So don't think you're just working for yourself and doing your own thing. You literally are working for your employees.
And you're responsible for all those families.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
I think about that when the pandemic started, and they're talking about closing businesses, and you're going to have to go home, and I don't know how many sleepless nights I had thinking about how am I going to feed all these people. I mean,
know.
literally,
No.
how are we going to feed all these people?
I take that so seriously, and it's almost like you can't think about it too much because it's huge weight of responsibility on your shoulders, but you better feel that way too. If you're starting a business and you're taking people on, it's your employees, their families, like that's a big deal.
Yeah, if you're responsible, I mean, you think being a parent is a lot of responsibility, double that with everybody else's families as well.
Yes.
And I've always said that, and it took me a long time to figure this out, that for me, shared values are really what make you find your tribe. And to your point, it's hard to figure that out in the beginning, and then eventually you figure out, okay, this is the person that fits this organization, it fits me.
Yep.
And courage was just absolutely, I said, why am I hiring people who are risk adverse when courage is my number one value?
Yeah.
It wasn't working, and finally I figured that out and have the best team I've ever had. But they look at it does. It takes a while to find your tribe.
Yeah,
no doubt.
It does.
So, looking at your business, last question on the business, then we'll talk a little bit about the world. What was your biggest surprise when as you've gone through your career? You're like, damn, I can't believe that happened, or wow, that was something that I never expected to happen.
Oh, the biggest surprise?
Yeah, that happened.
Oh my gosh.
Good, it could be good or bad, but probably good.
Okay, well, I will tell you, one of the biggest things, and I don't mean this in a boastful way, but one of the things I was not prepared for, and again, this probably goes back to level of confidence. When I started the business, I was like, oh my gosh, this is successful. And I never thought about the being prepared for success is just as hard as being prepared for the converse. So that was a surprise. Like once I got through, letting everybody know we started this business and things were rocking and rolling, and I was shocked, like, because we had to go through this huge growth curve right off the bat. And I had in my business plan a more methodical, here's phase 1, here's phase 2, years later.
And now we're on 7.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, and I look back on that because that was tough. Like I wasn't prepared for that. So I just wasn't prepared for that at all, that growth.
I still have to laugh because we had very similar where it just took off right away in the beginning. And I had a person that I admire so much who said to me, well, a new broom always sweeps clean. Well, that put me back into my place very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah.
Up and down. So crisis communication is a big piece of what you folks do.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, as it relates to the business professionals that are watching this, are there things that you see as sort of consistent issues that businesses have that if they would just stop or pay attention, they would stop having so many issues with crisis communication?
That duck and cover, it's not going to happen to me attitude. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like shaking the fate a little bit, but just that won't happen to me. And I'll give you a case in point is that, and my team and my sister remind me of this all the time. In February, I started sending out emails, like including warning bells regarding the pandemic. I'm a visionary kind of big picture thinker, and I could see how this was lining up. And there were just some organizations that couldn't wrap their head around it until the doors slam shut on March 13th.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's like, it's just not going to happen. They can't imagine that the worst could happen. So that's a little bit of a challenge. You know, sometimes maybe the leader of the organization just isn't a big picture thinker,
Right.
and can't see how things are going to line up. So that's been something. I'm trying to think of anything else. Leadership changes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, geez. It's just, I'll tell you, one of the things that we do with our clients or an organization that calls us is we do crisis communication planning. So we work with organizations like, let's start off with what are the 5 things like that keep you up at night? And it sounds like kind of a cliche sort of thing to ask them. There's typically something though that applies. So we work through that process with them, and that is such an awesome discovery process. And then we back into the filling out the rest of that plan. You know, how can they be better prepared for a potential crisis? So every organization is different, but there's typically an area that they might be a little bit more vulnerable.
Right, and pay attention, right.
But you know, it's not the situation so much, it's the people. That sometimes the people and their leadership actions, it's like throwing
I think
gas on a thing.
we have a community that doesn't always want to embrace change. We like who we are, we like sameness, but you know, I get this all the time. We need you to find us a new leader, and we don't want anybody to leave. And I say,
Well,
anytime you change a leader, you are likely to lose some people who don't share their vision. And it's okay if that happens. I've got that going on right now with a search. They're like, but we don't want to lose anybody on the team. And I said, either one who gets the job, you're going to lose somebody on the team. Because some people will follow that one, some people, and they're admittedly different and have different strengths.
Yeah.
They will find their tribe, and it will be better, but you just have to understand that it's unrealistic to think that. But that's the whole change thing.
Yes.
They don't like change. They
Resistant
like
to
sameness.
change.
Yeah. So the other thing I hear you talk a lot about is internal communications. And I think, I don't know, I got to tell you, when we look at, you know, one of the things we do is we go out and we visit with clients and we really listen to what they're not telling us.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, the issue is communication. Probably 10 out of 10, the issue is communication. So if you were to give our leaders some advice on how to be effective with internal communications that you've seen from other organizations that do it well, what would you tell them?
Be consistent and frequent and get out in front of things. So even if you think something is external that needs to be announced, 9 times out of 10, the organization forgets about their primary first audience are the employees, and how then that ties in with culture. Communications and culture go hand in hand. So internal communications is so important, and typically organizations just overlook that. But
do you think that the ability to be transparent from the leadership standpoint, because I know a lot of people are fearful as leaders to be too transparent. You know, you don't want to play your cards that it might not be perfect. Is that an issue, or do you think people are getting better at being more transparent?
I think they're getting better.
Good.
I almost, again, think like it's the external forces that are kind of forcing the hand on that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I think the pandemic has sort of forced us to be.
Yeah, be transparent, man, from the get-go. Give people time to process and then come back at you with questions. Like, that'll save you a lot of time and energy and effort in the long run.
I think as an entrepreneur, that's my biggest struggle. I want everybody to process it right now.
Gotta give time.
Give them time.
Yeah.
Let them,
Absolutely.
Just, you know, I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
There we go. Can we ask a few questions? Okay.
Yeah. Hit the pause button.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Dennis, hit the pause button. He does it every Sunday at church. Hit the pause button. So you're a mom. 4 sons.
Correct.
Oh my word, girl.
Yeah.
So 4 boys. How in the world do you manage 4 very good-looking young men, by the way?
Thank you.
4 sons and a big job running a company. And again, balance is this elusive thing.
Yeah.
But how are you? You know, there's a lot of people out there that they're going insane. You know, they're just like, I'm going to pull my hair out. I don't know how to do it. How are you doing it? Because again, we're all dealing with the same pandemic, And I heard, whether it was a podcast you've done or something, the whole mental health issue, it's really very, very real right now.
It is very real. So how do I do it? I am not going to sugarcoat this by any means. It has been horrible.
Mm-hmm.
The past year has been absolutely nuts. And then I kind of just boil it down to I just got to do it minute by minute.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a fourth grader at home doing the virtual learning. That has been an absolute just nightmare from the get-go since last spring. That's just nuts. Then I have a junior in high school. He's been doing virtual. I have one at college, another son living at home. Like, it has been such a struggle. So with all of that, I always emphasize mental health. I'm constantly checking in with my boys. I need them to know I'm here to listen, not just here to talk at you. I am listening to you. How are you feeling today? What can I do for you? How can I make you feel better? Like, what can we do? There has to be a proactive approach when it comes to mental health. And for them, for me, for my husband, and in our tribe.
Yeah, how is your husband doing? He's right in the front line.
He is. I think he was under a lot more stress than he probably realized. Like, there was last spring, we moved to a vacation home for a couple of months. So, because we didn't know, and plus our boys have autoimmune diseases. So we are a high-risk family, and we didn't know, like, if he's coming home, what do we need? I mean,
right.
We've really been exercising precautions at our home since this began. Like, it has been absolutely nuts. So he did just get his first vaccine, which thank goodness, and now we just got to wait for the rest of the rollout. Oh, my gosh.
I know. Well, we're praying on our end, too. I mean,
absolutely.
Just to not have to worry. It isn't even so much for business, just to alleviate some of the worry on a daily basis.
And I think, I don't know if you listened to my last podcast, that I told Raquel, like, I literally feel every day like I'm running for my life. And you can't maintain that.
No.
Oh my gosh.
The stress level's too high.
Yeah, the stress level's too high. So I don't know. I'm a little bit more tamer now in 2021 because maybe I'm just being hopeful, but...
And I like the minute by minute, because I do think that you do have to reflect on, okay, what can I manage and be successful with today, and then figure out what that looks like the next day.
Yeah.
And have small victories instead of trying to just win the big war all at once.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, one last question for our young listeners.
Yes.
So, I always ask this question because I think it's a great question for them. If you were going to give any piece of advice, if we have a college-age student or a high school student, what would you tell them that would be helpful for them to know?
I actually do give this advice out to those seeking their first job, that sort of thing. Like, it's tough. Prepare yourself for being in a tough role. It's a tough world. Like, I'm going to help you, or I'll always have an open door for you. You can ask me questions. I give a lot of presentations to younger students. But it's a tough world out there. So I don't want them to come into a new position or go out into the world thinking it's going to be a breeze. Like, I'd rather have them, like, mentally prepared that it's going to be tough and you're going to be okay. So that's my biggest thing. And then just circling back to what I said at the beginning of this interview, like, speak up. Like, the earlier you can find your voice, the better.
Yeah, I do think this generation is much better at that than we were. And I just think part of it is how we were raised. We were raised to be kind and not challenge and our elders and all of that.
Yeah.
I'm glad we both found our voice. Clearly we have.
We have.
Oh, Lisa, thank you. This was amazing.
This was awesome.
It was so good to spend a little time together.
Great to catch up with you.
We haven't been able to do that. So
I know. I appreciate it, Sharon.
So thank you for being on the podcast. And thank you, all of you, for listening.